How do you use key squares in chess endgames? Imagine you're in a tight spot on the chessboard, and every move counts. You want to turn a small advantage into a winning one, especially in the endgame. That's where key squares come into play. They are special squares on the board that, when your king controls them, can help you win or secure a draw. Think of them as strategic points that give your king the power to influence the game. In endgame strategy, controlling these squares can mean the difference between victory and a draw. To use key squares effectively, start by looking at where your pawn is. The position of your pawn determines which squares are key for your king. For example, if your pawn is on the second or third rank, the key squares are usually the squares 2 ranks ahead and the ones directly to the left and right of that square. If your pawn has advanced to the 5th or 6th rank, the set of key squares expands, sometimes covering 2 or 3 ranks ahead. Knowing this helps you plan your king's route to these critical squares. Once you identify these squares, your goal is to move your king onto them. When your king stands on a key square, it gains a commanding position. It can support your pawn's march forward or prevent the opposing king from blocking your plans. This is especially useful in king and pawn endgames, where the king's position is everything. A king on a key square can control escape routes for the opponent's king, making it easier for your pawn to promote. Using opposition is a common technique here. Opposition is when 2 kings face each other with only 1 square in between. This helps you maneuver your king to a key square while forcing the opponent's king into a passive position. Zugzwang, or a situation where your opponent must make a move that worsens their position, often happens once you control key squares. This can push your opponent into making mistakes, giving you a winning edge. Different pawns have different key square rules. Rook pawns, like O or H fell pawns, usually have just 2 key squares next to the promotion square. Controlling these squares is vital because the defending king can often draw if it reaches the corner. Central pawns, on the other hand, have a broader set of key squares, giving you more options to maneuver your king. Controlling key squares also helps you restrict your opponent's king. When your king occupies these critical points, it limits the opponent's options, making it harder for them to defend or block your pawn. This often forces the opposing king into a passive stance, which you can exploit to promote your pawn or win material. Finally, planning ahead and calculating your moves carefully is essential. Moving your king to a key square isn't always straightforward. You need to consider who moves next and what your opponent might do in response. Precise play ensures you reach these squares without losing tempo or allowing your opponent to seize control. In essence, mastering key squares in the endgame is about understanding their importance, knowing where they are relative to your pawn, and using techniques like opposition to reach them. When you do this well, you turn small advantages into clear wins, making your endgame play much stronger.